The night before our honeymoon, our suitcases sat neatly by the door, and I felt lighter than I had in years. It was supposed to be the beginning of something new, a week away from work, family, and all the silent battles I'd been fighting in my own home. But then, at 2 in the morning, my husband's phone rang. His mother. Her voice trembled through the speaker, full of forced panic. "James, I can't breathe. My heart, it's happening again." I watched as he shot out of bed, grabbing his jacket and keys without hesitation. I knew that tone too well, the delicate mix of weakness and control. Helen had always been dramatic, but this time she'd chosen the worst possible moment. By dawn, our honeymoon plans were on hold. The bags stayed by the door, untouched. James sat beside his mother's hospital bed, his face pale with worry, while I stood in the corner, silent. The monitors beeped steadily, but Helen looked suspiciously comfortable, even glancing at me with a faint smirk when James wasn't watching. She had always hated the idea of us going away, of him being too far from her. In her mind, I was the woman stealing her son, the outsider who dared to claim his attention. When the doctor entered and examined her, I saw confusion flicker in his eyes. "Your vitals are completely normal," he said calmly. But Helen clutched her chest again, gasping dramatically. I wanted to believe she was sick. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. But deep down, something told me this was another performance, another way to keep us tethered to her world. That night, James stayed at the hospital. I went home alone, staring at the untouched tickets on the counter. I felt my chest tighten, not from heartbreak but from realization. She wasn't sick, she was playing us. And if that was true, then she had no idea who she was dealing with. The next morning, Helen was sitting upright in her hospital bed, laughing with the nurse as if nothing had happened. When she saw me walk in, her smile vanished. She clutched her chest again, whispering, "Oh dear, it's coming back." The nurse gave her a puzzled look. Her monitor showed no irregularity. Still, Helen moaned faintly, glancing toward the door, waiting for James. When he entered moments later, she straightened, her voice turning fragile. "James, sweetheart, I thought I was dying last night." He rushed to her side, guilt washing over him, and I stood frozen, half in disbelief, half in awe of how easily she could command sympathy. It wasn't the first time. In the early months of our marriage, Helen's health would mysteriously decline every time we made plans without her. A dinner date, a weekend trip, even a late-night movie somehow. There was always a fainting spell, a dizzy episode, or sudden chest pain. Each time, James would cancel everything and run to her side. And every time, I told myself it was just bad luck. But not this time. This time, she'd taken away something precious, the one escape we had planned for ourselves. And she had done it without hesitation, because she knew exactly how much control she still held over her son. When I tried to talk to James, he only sighed. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "She's fragile. She's all I have left since Dad died." I wanted to scream. I tried to tell him she wasn't fragile. She was manipulating him. But instead, I nodded, biting my tongue, knowing words wouldn't save me now. I needed something undeniable. That evening, the doctor called me privately into the hallway. His tone was calm, but deliberate. "Your mother-in-law's tests are excellent," he said. "There's no sign of cardiac distress, no abnormalities. I think she might be exaggerating her symptoms." My heart slowed. Finally, proof. "Do not confront her yet," he added. "Let me handle this." That was the moment something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to be her quiet victim anymore. If she wanted to fake sickness, I'd let her, until her own performance turned against her. The following morning, Helen's hospital room was brighter, her bed neatly made, her makeup applied perfectly. She looked more like a woman preparing for brunch than a patient under cardiac observation. James sat beside her, clutching her hand with a devotion that made my stomach twist. The doctor walked in, calm, professional, and holding her latest test results. "Mrs. Wallace," he began, flipping through the pages, "we've completed your EKG blood work and stress test. Everything came back completely normal." Helen blinked innocently. "But doctor," my heart was racing. I could barely breathe. He smiled politely. "That can happen when someone experiences stress, but it's not a cardiac condition. In fact, your heart is in excellent shape for your age." The air in the room shifted. James looked at him, puzzled. "So, she's fine?" "Yes," the doctor said firmly, turning toward me with a knowing glance. Your wife was right to be cautious, but there's nothing physically wrong. Helen's lips tightened. I suppose it's good news then, she muttered, pretending to be embarrassed. But beneath that mask of humility, I could see it, the flicker of fury. The doctor had ruined her scene. Later, as we walked down the hospital corridor, James sighed with relief. Maybe it was just anxiety, he said softly. Maybe, I replied, forcing a smile. Inside, I was done pretending. Over the next few days, the doctor quietly kept me updated. He'd noticed patterns, spikes in Helen's reported symptoms whenever James wasn't home, and miraculous recoveries when he arrived. It wasn't medicine she needed, it was attention. Then one afternoon, he called me to his office. "Mrs. Wallace," he said, lowering his voice, "I can't ethically ignore what's happening. I think your mother-in-law might be feigning illness to manipulate your husband. If you permit me, I can tell him the truth, professionally." My pulse quickened. I hadn't asked for revenge, but fate seemed to hand it to me anyway. "Do it," I said quietly. He nodded. "Leave it to me." That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed every fake cough, every sigh, every accusation Helen had thrown my way, and for once, I felt calm. Because in the morning, her lies would finally meet the truth she couldn't control. The next morning felt oddly quiet. Helen was scheduled for one final checkup before discharge, and James had promised to be there early. I arrived first, sitting silently near the window while she fixed her hair in a small, compact mirror. She looked radiant, too radiant for someone claiming to have nearly died 2 nights ago. When the doctor entered, clipboard in hand, his expression was calm but purposeful. "Good morning, Mrs. Wallace," he said evenly. "I've reviewed all your files, and I'd like to go over them with your son and daughter-in-law present." Helen stiffened. "That's not necessary, doctor. I'm sure my son is busy, I insist," he replied politely, and gestured toward the door. As if on cue, James appeared, carrying a small bag of her clothes. He smiled faintly, relieved to see her sitting up. "Mom, you look so much better." "Yes," she said, shooting me a glance. "I'm sure the worst is behind us." The doctor cleared his throat. "Actually, Mrs. Wallace, I'd like to clarify something. You were admitted for suspected heart failure, but after multiple evaluations, I've found no signs of cardiac distress. None whatsoever." Helen's face drained of color. "Are you implying I lied about my symptoms?" He didn't flinch. "I'm saying your heart is completely healthy. What you've experienced seems more psychological than physical. And unfortunately, your pattern of reported episodes doesn't align with medical findings." James frowned. "What does that mean?" The doctor turned to him. "It means your mother's condition is not real, Mr. Wallace. Every test confirms that." For a long, silent moment, the world froze. James blinked, his lips parting slightly as he looked between his mother and me. "Mom, is that true?" Helen's hands trembled. "I don't know what he's talking about." "Maybe the machines don't lie," the doctor interrupted softly. "People do." Her eyes snapped toward me, blazing with silent rage. I didn't speak, I didn't need to. The truth had finally done the speaking for me. James sat down, disbelief painting his face. "Mom, you said you thought you were dying." "We canceled our trip," her voice cracked. "I just needed you here. You're my son. You never spend time with me anymore." The confession hung in the sterile air like poison. I stood quietly, watching his heartbreak mirror my own exhaustion. The spell she'd woven for years had finally unraveled. And in that moment, Helen realized the performance was over. Her audience had stopped believing. James didn't speak for a long time. He just sat there, elbows on his knees, staring at the hospital floor, as if searching for an answer that wouldn't make him hate himself. I could see the turmoil in his eyes, betrayal, confusion, guilt. Everything that had built his world was suddenly in question. Helen tried to reach for his hand. "James, sweetheart, you have to understand. I just felt so alone. After your wedding, everything changed. You're always with her." She glanced at me like I was the disease that caused it all, and I thought maybe if I got sick, you'd care again. He pulled his hand away, his voice trembling with anger. "You manipulated me. You made me believe you were dying. You let me cry in that hospital hallway, thinking I might lose you. And all because you couldn't handle me having a wife." Her lips trembled. "I did it out of love." "No," I said quietly. "You did it out of control." The words seemed to sting her more than any slap could. For once, she didn't have a comeback. No guilt-tripping story to twist things her way. James stood abruptly. "We're leaving now." Helen panicked. her voice cracking. Where are you going? You can't just abandon your mother. I'm not abandoning you, he said. I'm finally setting boundaries. Back at home, the silence between us was heavy but different, not painful, just honest. For the first time in months, no lies were hovering in the air. We unpacked the suitcases that had gathered dust since the day we canceled our honeymoon. That night, James came to me, eyes softer, tired but sincere. I'm sorry for not seeing it sooner. I kept thinking you were being too hard on her. I took his hand. I know you wanted to believe the best in her. I did too. He nodded, jaw tight. She have to live with the truth now. I can't fix that for her. Days later, Helen called, not to apologize, but to plead. She wanted James to visit, to talk things out, to start over. He agreed, but only on his terms. When he returned, he was calm. I told her that next time she fakes a heart attack, she'll be calling an empty house, he said. I smiled faintly, not out of spite but relief. Sometimes, revenge doesn't need grand gestures, just the quiet satisfaction of watching someone choke on their own lies. Months passed, and Helen's calls became less frequent. At first, she'd leave long, guilt-soaked voicemails about how a mother's love shouldn't be punished, or how James was being brainwashed by me. Eventually, even those stopped. It was as if she'd run out of energy to play the victim. James and I finally took our long day-late honeymoon, not to Paris, like we'd planned, but somewhere quieter, a small coastal town where no one knew our story, where the waves drowned out every lingering echo of his mother's voice. For the first time in a long while, I saw him laugh without hesitation. Still, part of me worried. People like Helen didn't just change, they regrouped, and I was right. When we returned, I noticed she'd tried reaching out again, not to James, but to me. Her message was short. You've turned my son against me, but I forgive you. Please, come for tea. I read it 3 times, knowing it wasn't forgiveness, it was another trap. But this time, I didn't flinch. I went anyway. When I arrived, her house looked smaller, lonelier. She opened the door in her usual soft cardigan, playing the part of the frail, misunderstood mother, but her eyes gave her away, cold, calculating. I didn't fake it for attention, she said as soon as we sat. I did it because I was scared of being forgotten. Her voice cracked, and for a second I almost pitied her. But then I remembered how she smiled when she saw our honeymoon tickets burn in the trash. You weren't scared, I said calmly. You were angry that your son grew up. Her face hardened. You think you've won, but one day, he'll see through you. I stood, sliding an envelope across the table, one she hadn't expected. That's from your doctor, I said. A recommendation for therapy. He thinks you need it. Her lips trembled with fury. You had no right. I had every right, I interrupted. Because next time you try to fake an illness, you won't get a doctor. You'll get the truth again. She didn't speak as I left, but the silence behind me said everything. She finally realized her power was gone. Word spreads fast in small towns, faster than Helen ever imagined. The doctor, the same one she had begged to keep her condition secret, finally reported her deception to the hospital board. He told them how she'd manipulated medical staff and falsified records just to stop her son's honeymoon. When the story leaked, the community that once pitied her began to whisper behind her back. Her bridge club stopped inviting her. Her friends avoided her at the grocery store. The woman who lived on attention and sympathy now had no one left to listen. James didn't speak to her for months. He was heartbroken, not just by what she'd done, but by how deeply she'd twisted his love for her. I could see it in his eyes every time he stared at an old photo. The grief of losing the mother he thought he knew, but something remarkable happened in that silence. He began to heal. Without her manipulation, he started to see clearly, to understand that love isn't control, and guilt isn't affection. One afternoon, while sorting through old boxes, he found a letter she'd written but never sent. It was full of half apologies and blame, the same cycle she always lived in. He handed it to me and said quietly, "This is who she is, and I can't save her anymore." That night, we finally took our postponed honeymoon, a symbolic one, just a simple dinner under the stars in our backyard. No lies, no interruptions, just peace. A week later, Helen called again. Her voice was smaller now. "James," she whispered, "I'm sorry, I didn't think it would end like this." He listened, then said something that closed the chapter for good. "Mom, you didn't lose us because you were sick. You lost us because you pretended to be." When he hung up, he turned to me and smiled faintly. "Let's go on that real honeymoon." And for the first time since that chaotic night, the air felt clean. No guilt, no performance, just freedom. Helen remained in that town, alone, surrounded by the echoes of her own deceit, and I knew she finally understood the truth. Pretending to be broken can cost you everything, especially the people who once cared enough to fix you.